If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload almost daily on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent sports talk, this is the place for it. Also, drop a like on the video, it only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. In my last video talking about some of the lies that people like to tell about the 90s, I mentioned the 3-year period in the 90s where the NBA shortened the 3-point line by 1 foot and 9 inches, moving it from 23 feet and 9 inches to just 22 feet. And I had a thought when writing that script, which is, what if the NBA never moved it back to what it originally was? How would that affect the league's players today, the league as a whole, and most importantly, the greatest shooter of all time? Let's find out. The 3-point line was shortened at the beginning of the 1994-95 season in an attempt to get players to use it more. Though 3-point shooting was gradually going up as the years went on, it was not going up fast enough. From 1980 to 1990, it only went from 2 3-pointers a game to 6.6. This was not a rapid pace whatsoever, so in a heavy mid-range shooting era, the league moved the line closer to turn some of those long 2s into 3s. And this was a success. In the 4 seasons before 94, the league average 3-point attempts a game was 8.4, with the league average percentage being 33%, but in the 3 seasons where the line was shortened, the average 3-point attempts went up to 16 a game, with the average percentage being 36.2%. That is nearly twice the amount of attempts per game, and a 3.2% increase in percentage just by moving the line back 1 foot and 9 inches. Now, if we take this to modern times and consider how it affects everything as we know it now, there is a simple and frankly unrealistic way to do it, and then there is the more nuanced and realistic way to do it. The simple way would be to take today's league average attempts and double it like what happened in the 90s, as well as increase the percentage. In that case, the league average 3-point attempts would go up to 68 attempts per game, and the average percentage would be 38.9%. And assuming those extra 34 3-pointers per game replaced all those 2-pointers, that would mean teams were only taking 22-point shots per game. 79.4 points a game would come from the 3-pointers, and those 22-pointers would result in 21.84 points a game, which would actually reduce the number of points per game average in the league by nearly 10, because the overall field goal percentage would drop that much more with that many 3-pointers. And if we took this percentage increase as well as doubled the 3-point attempts with Steph Curry, that would mean he's taking 24 3-pointers a game on 46.9% shooting from 3, which would result in him taking more shots than he currently takes right now and him averaging 33.7 points per game. And I call this unrealistic for a reason, if you haven't picked up on how ludicrous this is yet. In today's NBA, with shooting having the revolution that it has, you cannot expect a shortened line to result in double the amount of 3-point attempts. If that were to happen, over 70% of shots that players take would be 3-pointers. And as we saw, the league average point per game went down by 10 points per game with this many 3-pointers, because at a certain threshold, too many 3s can be bad for an offense. You need a proper balance. I think the league as it is now has a perfect balance between 3-pointers and 2-pointers. In the 90s, there were way too many 2-pointers. In the 80s, there were basically no 3-pointers. So I think today is perfect. But another product of the 3-point shooting revolution of today means way less mid-range shots than were being taken in the 90s, especially long mid-range shots. Back in the 90s, a mid-range shot where you're really only a foot into the line was very, very common. Now, it's considered one of the worst shots in basketball because you might as well just get behind the 3-point line if you're going to shoot from that far. But back then, when you moved the line further back, you were basically just turning a lot of long 2-pointers that players were taking anyways into 3-pointers. Teams didn't see the shortened line and think suddenly we should double our attempts. Players were just shooting those shots from that distance anyways. So the proper adjustment for today would be to consider how many extra threes a game would be taken from long 2-point range, turn those into 3-pointers, as well as consider the adjustment of percentage. Not just by adding a 3.2% increase, but actually a larger increase because the shooting talent of today's league. Now, I could not find the long 2-point attempt rate throughout the entire league. That stat does not exist, or I just could not find it. However, I'm going to get an estimate by looking at the league average shooting team in the NBA, which is the Denver Nuggets. They are ranked 15th straight in the middle in pretty much every shooting statistic. Then I'm going to take the 16 to 3-point range attempt rate of every player on that team, find the average within the team, and then take that as the league average long 2-point attempt rate. And that rate was 9.09, however, because it's 16 feet to 3-point range, I'm going to cut those attempts in half because a lot of them could be just 16-footers. So that's a 4.5% long, nearly 3-point range attempt rate. Long 2s really are not all that common, so that means that 4.5% of what were 2-pointers will turn into 3-pointers with a shortened line. That's really not a lot, because that's a shot that teams really try to avoid at all costs these days. And in the NBA today, teams on average shoot 54.9 2-pointers per game, which means that those 2s only bring in 2.5 extra 3-pointers a game, which obviously is not a lot. Like I said earlier, back in the 90s, teams did not hate long mid-range shots, so as a result, by moving the line closer, that resulted in 8 more 3-point attempts per game. But in today's league, those long 2s are so uncommon, it only results in 2.5 extra 3-pointers a game. But where the real impact comes is with the percentage increase. Because of how much more talented shooters are in the modern NBA, the 3-point percentage would not increase by just 3.2% like it did in the 90s, because back then players were still not that capable of shooting the ball from even 22 feet. The league average 3-point percentage this year was 35.7%, which is just 0.5% less than it was in the 90s with a shortened line, and 2.7% better than the NBA before the shortened line in the early 90s. So what this means, and I hope this makes sense to y'all because it barely makes sense to me, just because there was a 3.2% increase in the 90s with that level of shooting talent does not mean the increase would be that small in the modern NBA with the shooting talent we have now. Now, I'm pretty certain there is a way to make the math work to figure out what the exact percentage increase would be, however, I am not smart enough for that whatsoever. So we're going to say with the ability of modern shooters, the increase goes up to 3.8% with just a 0.6% more than in the 90s. I hope that's fair. So we have 2.5 more 3-pointers being shot per game with a 3.8% increase in percentage league-wide. And with all this said, in the 2020 NBA season, this would result in teams taking 36.4 3-pointers a game, and it would result in a 39.5% 3-point percentage. This would result in 40% from 3 being just above average in the NBA, which is pretty insane to think about. This would result in teams hitting 14.4 3-pointers a game, which is 2.3 more 3-pointers made a game, which would really only result in just 2.3 more points per game, which means teams would average 113.7 points per game this season. So this doesn't really seem all that significant league-wide outside of an increase in percentage. It doesn't result in all that many more points per game, however, it makes the 3-pointer that much more efficient because now league-wide players are hitting nearly 40% of their 3-pointers. But what I really wanted to see is how this would affect Steph Curry. It's the reason he's in the title and thumbnail. If I wanted to, I could go all day on a lot of the league's top 3-point shooters, but we're just going to keep it to Steph to keep it short. And I'm going to use Steph's numbers from the 2018-19 season as well as the adjusted numbers from that season rather than 2020 to figure out how he would have shot last year. When in 2019, Steph shot 11.7 threes a game and shot 43.7%. The league average 3-point percentage this season was 35.5%, which means Steph shot 8.2% better than the league average. This man is really on his own level. So if the league's 3-point percentage increased to 39.3% and Curry shot 8.2% better then, he would have shot 47.5% from 3. Curry also shot 4.6% of his shots from long two. Divide that by 2 again like earlier, and that means that he only has a 2.3% increase in attempts, which is like nothing. It moves the needle from 11.7 attempts to 12. But with him shooting 12 threes a game, shooting 47.5%, he would hit 5.7 threes a game, which would result in 0.6 more made threes a game, which over the 69 games he played that year, nice. He would have hit 393 threes, which is 39 more made threes than he hit originally. And if we're looking at Steph's career, really just focusing on his prime for the sake of time, rhyming accidentally, I'm going to use the same math that I did earlier, except I'm not going to spell all of it out because, as you just saw, that took a long-ass time, so just take my word for it. But with Steph for his prime from 2013 to now, he would have shot 9.9 threes a game and shot 47.1% from 3, which over 6 seasons, over 436 games, would have resulted in 2,033 made threes, which is 194 extra made threes than he originally hit. So in the short term, the actual amount of extra threes would not be all that significant, but over a 6-year span, you can see how they add up. And having a career 3-point percentage closer to 50 than 40 is fucking wild. So with this, Curry would have had the best 3-point percentage ever for his career over his coach Steve Kerr, and he also would have hit almost 200 more threes in his prime, and I'm sure more than 200 with his other seasons on top of that. So Curry would have the highest 3-point percentage ever, with him taking the volume of 3-pointers that he does, which was nearly 10 a game for his prime. That would only make it that much more obvious that Steph is the greatest shooter of all time. But that's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.